You probably touched woven material before breakfast. A bedsheet, a towel, a shirt, maybe a charging cable wrapped in braided fibers. It feels so normal that your brain barely notices it. Now remove all of it. No fabric, no shoelaces, no backpacks, no fishing nets, no blankets, no straps holding tools together. Suddenly your entire day starts falling apart. Your phone dies because there is no cable. Your groceries spill because there is no bag. Even staying warm becomes a problem. Strange, isn't it? One of the most important technologies in human history is so invisible that most people never think about it at all. For more than 99% of human history, this was not a thought experiment. It was survival. When people imagine ancient technology, they usually picture stone axes, spear points, or fire. Those inventions deserve the spotlight. But another breakthrough quietly changed everything. Weaving. The tricky part is that woven materials rarely survive. Stone lasts for tens of thousands of years. Plant fibers do not. They rot. They disappear. They leave archaeology with a frustratingly incomplete hard drive. So how do researchers know weaving existed deep in the human past? One clue comes from a famous site called the Dzudzwana Cave in present-day Georgia. Researchers discovered flax fibers dated to roughly 30,000 years ago. Some were twisted. Some were dyed. This finding, published by a team led by researcher Ofer Bar Yosef and colleagues, suggested that Upper Paleolithic humans were already manipulating plant fibers in surprisingly sophisticated ways. Think about that for a second. Dyeing fibers is not the behavior of people barely scraping through existence. Dyeing fibers means planning, experimenting, caring about appearance. Ancient humans were not living inside a non-stop disaster movie. Another important clue comes from the work of archaeologist Olga Sofer and colleagues, who studied impressions left on clay and figurines. These marks suggest techniques resembling cordage, netting, or textile production tens of thousands of years ago. Academic language calls this fiber technology. In plain English, it means your ancestors were figuring out how to turn floppy plants into useful tools. That sounds simple. It was not. Try making a strong cord from wild plant fibers without a tutorial, without a hardware store, and without a single manufactured tool. Suddenly the task feels less like arts and crafts and more like advanced engineering. Here is the myth that often sneaks into people's minds. Ancient humans spent all day hunting mammoths while everyone else sat around waiting. Reality was much more complicated. A successful hunt might provide food, but woven technology helped solve dozens of daily problems. Carrying food, securing shelters, making traps, creating nets, protecting infants, attaching stone tools to handles. A spear point alone was useful. A spear point firmly tied to a shaft was transformative. Picture a day around 30,000 years ago. The morning air is cold. A small group gathers near a campsite. Someone returns with bundles of plant stalks collected earlier. Another person separates fibers by hand. Fingers pull, twist, tighten, repeat. It is repetitive work, almost meditative. Why spend hours doing this? Because every strand matters. A longer cord can carry more food. A stronger net can catch more fish. A better sling can transport resources back to camp. Small improvements stack together, just like software updates accumulating into a completely different operating system. This is where modern people sometimes underestimate their ancestors. Your ancestors were not primitive because they lacked smartphones. They were specialists in a different environment. Their brains tracked seasons, animal movements, edible plants, weather patterns, and material properties with astonishing precision. Many probably knew more practical information about survival than the average modern person learns in a lifetime. And weaving demanded exactly that kind of intelligence. You had to know which plants worked best, which fibers snapped, which became stronger when wet, which could be collected in one season but not another. Knowledge like that was not stored in cloud servers. It lived inside human memory and moved from one generation to the next. By the time woven fibers began appearing in the archaeological record, something profound was already happening. Humans were no longer just adapting to nature. They were redesigning nature into tools. A plant growing beside a river was becoming a rope, a net, a container, and eventually something far more meaningful than simple technology. Because hidden inside those twisted strands was a deeply human story that most people never notice. Because hidden inside those twisted strands was a deeply human story that most people never notice. Imagine sitting beside a fire after sunset. The hunt is over. The gathering is finished. The day's immediate emergencies have passed. Yet somebody is still working. Fingers continue twisting fibers in the flickering light. At first glance, it looks unimportant. It is not. That person is creating something that may outlast today's meal. A rope, a net, a carrying sling, a woven container, something another person will use tomorrow, maybe next month, maybe next year. This is the emotional heart of weaving. Unlike a spear thrown in a moment of danger, weaving is an investment in the future. Why spend hours making something you do not need right now? Because somebody you care about will need it later. A child may need to be carried. An elder may need extra warmth. A fishing net may feed an entire group during a difficult season. Every twisted strand represents delayed gratification, one of humanity's most powerful superpowers. Modern life often treats patience as a flaw. Your ancestors treated it as survival. This is one reason archaeologists increasingly view textile technologies as far more important than many people realize. Weaving required planning, teaching, cooperation, knowledge transfer, the same cognitive skills that eventually supported agriculture, cities, writing, and civilization itself. In a strange way, every woven object was also a social network. Not the kind on your phone. A real one. Somebody had to learn the technique. Somebody had to teach it. Somebody had to remember which plants worked best. Somebody had to pass that information to the next generation. A broken strand could be repaired. A broken chain of knowledge was much harder to fix. That may explain why woven technologies appear across so many different human societies around the world. The exact materials changed. The environments changed. The cultures changed. But the underlying idea kept reappearing because it solved a universal problem. Humans are fragile alone. Humans become powerful when connected. And here is the twist most people never see coming. The story of weaving is not really about fabric. It is about connection. A rope is many weak fibers becoming strong together. A net is many separate strands creating something none of them could achieve alone. Sound familiar? The same principle built human societies. Your ancestors did not become successful because they were the strongest animals on Earth. They were not. They did not become successful because they were the fastest. They were not that either. They succeeded because they connected things. People to people, knowledge to memory, tools to ideas, and fibers to fibers. The human brain seems almost obsessed with creating networks. That instinct never disappeared. It simply changed form. Today, instead of weaving plant fibers into nets, you weave information into digital networks. Instead of carrying food in woven baskets, you carry thousands of photographs, conversations, and memories inside a device that fits into your pocket. The technology changed. The underlying behavior did not. This creates a fascinating mismatch with modern life. Your brain evolved to build meaningful connections slowly. One relationship, one lesson, one skill, one strand at a time. Modern technology often delivers connections instantly. Thousands of messages, endless notifications, constant updates. Yet many people feel more disconnected than ever. Why? Because your ancestral brain was not designed to count connections. It was designed to strengthen them. Just like weaving, a net with 1,000 weak strands breaks easily. A smaller net with strong strands survives. The same pattern appears everywhere. Friendships, families, communities, even personal habits. Your ancestors understood something that modern culture occasionally forgets. Strength rarely comes from a single impressive thread. It comes from many small threads working together over time. That is why weaving matters. Not because it gave humans clothing. Not because it created ropes. Not because it helped build shelters. Those things were important. But weaving also reveals something profound about who your ancestors were. They were planners, teachers, problem solvers, caregivers, people willing to spend hours creating something that might help another human being later. The next time you pull on a hoodie, tie a shoelace, zip a backpack, or wrap your hands around a charging cable, you are touching the descendant of an idea that may be tens of thousands of years old. An idea so successful that it quietly followed humanity through every chapter of its story. And that brings everything back to the beginning. You probably touched woven material before breakfast. Most people never notice. But hidden inside those ordinary fibers is one of the greatest achievements in human history. Not because the strands themselves were remarkable, because the minds that learned to connect them were.